Coming up on your favorite podcast, we didn't do a PGA preview this week of the PGA Championship because lives were crazy and busy and intense. But holy shit, Phil Mickelson wins the PGA Championship at age 50. Ty and I are here on a Sunday night, fresh after the victory for Phil. We're going to break it down. We want to talk about Phil's victory, what it means, what are the long-term ramifications, but then we also are going to talk about the guys who didn't win, and what does that say about them, that Phil rolls in at 50 and wins the whole thing. We'll talk Jordan, we'll talk Rory, we'll talk JT, Jon Rahm, we'll talk Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, you name it, we're talking about everything. It is a PGA Championship post-game pod. It's Ty, it's me, it's Next, and it's on the pod. Hey, it's the Tim Anderson Podcast. I'm Tim, and I had to get the bat signal up, and we've got Ty, who had to rush to a computer just to give us a little bit of time here to talk PGA Championship. We've got him. He's on the line. Tyus, you are a busy man right now, but it's good to talk to you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is perfect that we're doing this. I think this is going to be a staple for major championships. And yeah, I'm excited to talk, obviously, Phil Mickelson, and I'm excited to talk Kiowa.
This is gut reaction. Normally when we do a pod, Ty likes to come in with a series of notes, and I come in with some research, and we have stuff prepared. But this is just a instant reaction from the gut podcast. We're going to talk Phil, talk the PGA Championship as a whole. This was as entertaining of 4 days of golf as we've had in really a long time. I can think of maybe the 2019 Masters as the last time I was like really captivated by 4 rounds of golf. And this tournament totally delivered. The golf course delivered. And obviously the champion. This is one of the great stories in American sports.
Yeah, it would be hard to make an argument against that. And it was fitting that Tiger has kind of faded a little bit out of relevance because this was really Phil's moment. And he wasn't out of relevance the whole week. He was right on top of the leaderboard, almost wire to wire. So like I said, it was Phil's week. I'm going to have some controversial takes here that you might not agree with, but really, really happy for Phil. The golf course was such a great venue. I hope that I think that the PGA Tour will be back. One of the theories I have is I think that Phil Mickelson could have beat the field today right-handed. It was a pretty bad showing from everyone else. Not a golf course I would have wanted to play with Sunday conditions with the wind up. But yeah, it was not a great performance from everybody else. But Phil earned it. He really did. So
you're bringing me kind of my first reaction. I think we might agree on more things. I think today was like a seismic, tectonic plate-like shift in the golf world because I think it brought clarity to some players that we had been unclear about. Or at least it changed the way we think about some guys. I think heading into this week, we had a list of 15, 20 guys that we think these are big game hunters, these are tough guys, these are the elite players on tour. I don't think we leave Kiowa with 15, 20 guys that we look at as big game hunters, that we look at as killers, that we say these guys, any golf tournament they can win. I think there are guys that we have eliminated from that list and have to prove it to get back into the conversation, I think. I don't think we can put them in the top of the leaderboard or the top of our favorites heading into events. I don't think that can happen for some guys anymore.
I'm curious to know who's on this list. I had kind of a list of my own in my head of people that I think you could now squarely say you could give them the overrated tag. Like you said, this will very much shape how we go into the next major because I gave so many guys a chance or even a probability to be there, and they weren't even close. I mean, this isn't one of the guys you can call overrated, but Dustin Johnson's clearly not right. Jon Rahm, man, something's up there. Yep. And it might not be something's up, but it could be more so just
I think he's looking more and more like Sergio Garcia every day. Just like a guy who it may never put it all together, may have a great career. Like Serge has had a fine career, but nowhere near what we thought he would have. Right? Nowhere near the career that I think people projected for him. It might be too early to say that about Rahm, but I don't know if it's. I think we can at least start to have that discussion that maybe Jon Rahm's not the guy we thought he was. Like, and there's other guys we're going to put on that list too, but let's just stay with Phil for 1 second. He wins at almost 51. He's 50 years, 11 months, 7 days. At 51, that's got to give hope to almost every guy 45 and older, including the big cat. Like, you have to say now, like, if I get my body right and I do the things that I need to do, I'm not saying I can summon it every weekend for an entire year on the PGA Tour, but for one weekend, I can and I will. Like, because I have the greatness in me, the experience in me to do this. Phil, in what had to have been the most stressful Sunday round that we've had on the tour in a year, emerged as the guy who was mentally tough. Like, the guy who we thought was the smallest guy mentally the last 3 or 4 weeks to a month. We picked on him 2 weeks ago on the podcast for all of his stuff about losing focus. It turns out he's the strongest mentally of them all, at least for one weekend, on the biggest weekend of the year.
Yeah, you're right. This has to give a lot of guys hope, and I don't want to get off of Phil, like you said. So let's not do that, but I'm going to throw out a name here. If you're Ricky Fowler and you say, okay, my game's not where it needs to be to win a major championship right now, but if my window might be another 20 years and I could catch lightning in a bottle, and because it can feel overwhelming for guys who have been T2 10 times in majors, it can feel like, you know what, to come out here, you know, I only get 4 shots at it a year, sometimes less if my game's not together, and I have to beat everyone in the world. I have to beat everyone. It can feel overwhelming, but like you said, what Phil did this week can prove that you can strike lightning in a bottle, and you don't have to be the best player on earth for a long time. You just have to beat him for 4 days, and it's kind of just a different way to look at it. And we don't really know Phil's, you know, mindset. If he went into the tournament thinking he had a chance, you know, he might have the corporate lines. We may never know, but I do think that this will provide hope for a lot of people. So, yeah, it was fun week.
Yeah, I don't know if Phil will ever win another tournament, just like I don't know if Tiger's ever going to win another one. But if your last win is a win like this, I mean, it's fantastic. Like, it's Jack Nicklaus at the 86 Masters. It's Tiger at the 19 Masters. This win will be in that mix of, like, one of the great wins of all time. They will talk about this one forever because of the fact that, yeah, Phil's the oldest guy. But I think also because, like, Phil he's already a top 15 guy in the history of golf. Like, that was cemented. But now I think you got to think of him like a top 10 guy. Like, that win changes a lot of things. And it gives him exemptive status through his age 55. Almost 56. Like, he can play fully exempt on the tour in all the majors until he's 55, 56 years old. That's incredible. Like, that he's going to be around 5 more years, and he's not going to the Champions Tour, folks. Like, no. It was a nice run. I'm glad you got the 3 tournaments that you got. He ain't going to play there much more, I promise you. He's playing on the tour now because I think he got validated that he could win.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think our views may be more in line than I originally thought. So I'll ask you this question. It might be obvious at this point, but so what do you attribute this to? Is this a testament to where Phil's game is, or was it just the fact that he's, like you said, apparently a mentally tough guy, a top 10 player? He's not an old man. He doesn't play golf like an old man. And he just was able to put it together for 1 week when a lot of the other big names couldn't. Which do you think it is?
You know, I think his mental approach deserves some credit here. We laugh at Phil because of the coffee and the Zen and the calves and all of that stuff. But the one thing that I don't think we wonder if we've shortchanged Phil a little bit, because now he does have 6 majors. But beyond the 6 majors are like 7 runner-ups at the U.S. Open, a couple of top 3 to 4 finishes at the Open, at the Masters, he's been around leaderboards in major championships a lot. And what we've learned is it's really hard to win these events. It's really hard. And the window, when you have them, this is what makes Tiger amazing and Jack amazing and Arnold Palmer and Ben Hogan and now Phil to a certain extent amazing, the fact that they have 6 of them over the course of multiple decades. It speaks to certainly a mental, like a mental acumen, but also just like I think it speaks to just a level of competitive spirit, I think. One thing we could always say about Phil is he has not lost his competitive drive. Like, he has still wanted to be a top guy and wanted to play like one. He hasn't done it, but he's wanted to. And I think it says a lot to, like, when you're good, you're good. You can summon it once in a while. It's kind of like Nolan Ryan throwing a no-hitter at age, like, 44. It's like, yeah, maybe you don't have the electric stuff that you used to have every night, but you still have electric stuff. And eventually and occasionally and every once in a while, you can summon it, and you've got it. And you can just, and for one night, for 1 week, for 1 year, you can make it work. And Phil made it work for 4 days.
Yeah, I typically try not to overreact to things that are of small sample size, but I think in hindsight, what Phil's done, like you said, it's not really a small sample size. Like, there's a little bit of the gimmicky stuff, and like you said, we were making fun of him a couple weeks ago. We were. And he really did prove me wrong. It's hard to prove someone wrong on such a grand scale in such a short amount of time, but Phil did it, and I'm willing to admit that yeah, he still has it. And like you said, the Nolan Ryan thing is perfect because, yes, is he going to go on a run and win the next 3 majors? No chance. But you don't rule him out at the U.S. Open.
You can't
right?
now. No, you can't.
No.
You can't rule him out at Torrey Pines, can you? And you can't rule him out for the Ryder Cup now. He was so far away from the Ryder Cup. We were talking about him as vice captain 2 weeks ago. Just take your vice captaincy, Phil, and start getting in line to be a captain eventually. Now we're like, he's got to be on the team. You can't leave a major champion off the team.
No.
Like, and Stricker probably went there and went, oh, shit, really?
Yeah.
Now I have to take Phil and his craziness. I have to have him on the team.
And especially the way some of the American guys have been faltering. I mean, a month ago we were like, well, he really can't leave off a Patrick Cantlay or a Scotty Scheffler or who am I thinking of? He played pretty well this week, made the cut.
Well, JT, you start thinking, like, there's no way you leave guys like, and I still think you have to take Koepka and Johnson to a certain extent. But if you're Stricker and you looked at the sample size this weekend and you watched guys like Padraig Harrington take a top 6 finish in the tournament over all these guys that are supposed to be your top guns, I don't think you love that. I think Harrington walked away feeling a hell of a lot better about his situation than Stricker did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was an impressive finish. What do you think about Brooks Koepka on the par 5s today?
This is an interesting one. Koepka, we'll shift right. We'll use this we'll come back to Phil in a minute. Let's shift away and talk about Koepka and talk about some of these other guys. I think Koepka for the first time ever we got the attention of everybody in the house with this Brooks Koepka take. I think Brooks for the first time ever looked a little intimidated. He looked a little unsure. Now, some of that could be the knee, right? Some of that could be. But I think a lot of that was that atmosphere was pro-Phil. And normally Brooks Koepka likes wearing the black hat, likes being the villain, likes being the guy who stands in the middle of the alley and says, "I'll take on the best guy here." And I don't care if the fans love him or hate him. I think it got to him today. Like, I think the pressure, the moment, the golf course, the conditions, the people, the fans, I think it rattled his cage. And you could see it at 18. You really could see it at 18 when the throng of people started to swarm. I don't think he looked real comfortable there. And I think he ran off that golf course when Phil dropped that last putt. He said, "Yep, congratulations," patted him on the back, and I think they were out of there. Because I don't think he wanted any part of that stage in that moment.
No, after that double on 2, I never really looked at Koepka on the leaderboard and thought he was much of a threat. I thought that Oosthuizen was much more of a threat the entire day. Had a couple hiccups, but I honestly never thought that Brooks Koepka was going to make a charge after he doubled 2.
Yeah,
he just, like you said, he did not look comfortable. He didn't look confident, and it could be the health, but I think more so this week proved that Brooks Koepka, that probably was peak Brooks Koepka, where he had a chance to win, right? He was in the mix pretty much throughout the whole week. I don't think it was a lot of health-related issues. I think more so he just got beat by someone who was better, and like you said, he just wasn't confident. He looked intimidated. So
the swagger, that kind of strut. I felt like that strut wasn't as pronounced as we've come to see it from Brooks Koepka. Like when he's rolling good, he's like John Wayne. Like he's strutting, and he's kind of got his little mojo going. I didn't see that today. I didn't see that kind of mojo tough guy thing where he's got his hands on his hips or his arms crossed and he's kind of daring you to make a putt. I didn't see that out of Brooks Koepka today. And he made the birdie at 1, and a little part of you was like, okay, 2-shot swing to start. Brooks Koepka's got some mojo, and he stood on that second tee, and I think when that ball didn't go where he wanted it to go, and he got a couple of bad breaks, I think it rattled him. And I do think it's fair to start to wonder if there's some adversity that Brooks has to overcome now mentally. If you recall, like when he won at Bethpage Black, he had like an 8-shot lead or a 6-shot lead, and DJ almost reeled him in. And the fans turned on Brooks Koepka that back 9 and started rooting for DJ. And they were cheering DJ really loud, and they weren't cheering Brooks Koepka really loud. And I think that bothered Brooks Koepka. I really do. Then you look at last year at Harding Park, he talks all that trash after round 3 about how all these guys haven't won anything, and I have, and I know how to win, and blah, blah, blah. And he didn't get it done on that Sunday. And a lot of guys, I think that rubbed a lot of guys the wrong way, and I think it motivated people. And I think the same thing happened here. He got himself in the moment, and then went, like the jockey who goes to the horse and just says, all right, I'm gonna go to the whip one time, and we're going to get it going, and I'll have it. He went to the whip, and there wasn't any horse. Like, he just didn't have the extra gear to push himself through. I think the fans being there in large numbers for the first time in a year plus, I think actively rooting against him, I think proved to be a problem.
Yeah, if you're losing fandom to Dustin Johnson, you're probably not a very well-liked guy among the crowd. But in hindsight, I can't say I called this but in hindsight, it was a terrible pairing for Brooks Koepka because he does like to be that villain. He likes to be the intimidating person. And you heard, all the interactions with Phil today when he was in the crowd and he was making jokes. And that's probably the same way it was standing on the tee box, the first tee all the way through. And that's probably not what Brooks Koepka wanted or needed. Brooks Koepka needed a little bit of a cocky young guy who thought he was going to go out and beat Brooks, and Brooks would have slammed the door. But, I think Phil probably kept it very light, and that probably made Brooks uncomfortable, and it showed. So, yeah, he lost the tournament today. After that 2-shot swing, I remember I was actually in the car, and my wife was updating me, and she told me what happened, and I just pretty much at that point said I think Brooks is now the favorite, and that couldn't have changed any faster with Phil birdieing 2 and Brooks double bogey.
I think the only guy who could intimidate Phil Mickelson's Tiger. you feel like that's the only guy who's kind of had some mind control over Phil has been Tiger over the years. And look, that's not a thing because Tiger had mind control over the entire tour for 20 years. But Brooks, I don't think Brooks could intimidate Phil. Like, I think Brooks does like to intimidate guys, and I think he does intimidate guys. I think there are guys that just don't want to stand next to Brooks Koepka in a big spot. Like I think him and DeChambeau have had a nice exchange over the last year. I think he stared a lot of dudes down in the last 3 to 4 years in his career. I don't think he could intimidate Koepka. Like, I don't think he could intimidate Phil. I don't think he could. And I think if Tiger was paired with Brooks at Belle Reve, I don't know if he certainly wouldn't have intimidated Tiger. And I think the best thing that happened to Brooks that day was the fact that Tiger was 2 groups ahead. So the crowd was way away from him, and he didn't have to endure that pressure, that heat. He didn't have to feel it, experience it, any of that. And but he did today. He had to deal with all the heat, and I don't think he was ready for it. As a lot of these guys on tour aren't. They're just not ready for the fans being so partial. I mean, and they were. It couldn't have been more pro-Phil. I mean, if this was not in his backyard, I mean, this would have been a more pro-Phil crowd. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, I think since we've been talking, a lot about a little bit of a collapse. I mean, he did play well enough on Thursday, Friday, Saturday to win. Had a good week when we couldn't necessarily expect it. I think this probably tells us that he's going to be good to go for the Ryder Cup. Whereas even after the Masters, we weren't totally sure. But I think health-wise, he'll be in good shape as long as there's no setback. So that's positive for the U.S. team because we don't know who he's going to play with, but we'll know. We know he'll be there and he'll be healthy. Another person that I heard talking early on in the week was Bryson DeChambeau, and they had asked him about the Ryder Cup, and I was interested how open he was to talking about a tournament that's a few months down the road when he's at Kiowa about to tee off in a major championship. But they asked him about what was going to be different in the second Ryder Cup, and he said that he's going to be more apt to telling the coaches who he's comfortable playing with. So I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting to hear him say that, and you do think, and I think is that 100% a shot at Brooks, or 100% a Steve? Just in case you don't read the paper or have a Twitter handle, me and Brooksy may not be a good partnership. So let's make sure we stay out of each other's pod. But to me, that's already a scary thought on the U.S. team because you've already got you never hear about this on the European side. I mean, it's not that the Euros don't get along or don't have infighting, because I'm sure they do. I'm sure there are guys on the European tour who don't dig each other, or on the European side who don't dig each other. But for the Americans, I think it's a little more out there than I think the Americans want it to be. And I think, going in, it's like Bryson and Brooks are going to be on that team, and I don't think you can pair them. Just like for years you couldn't pair Tiger and Phil. And Hal Sutton tried. It was a total failure. It blew up in his face. And now Hal Sutton doesn't get talked about anymore. He's kind of a social pariah in golf. I mean, fair or unfair, and I think it's unfair. But that's just how this goes. And same thing here with Bryson and Brooks. Now, I agree with you that I don't want to overreact because Brooks does have 4 majors. And he did put himself in the final group on Sunday. And he does have a game that can play on pretty much any kind of golf course. I like Brooks Koepka a lot because he is tough. And I think I was just surprised at how he didn't have it. I think that's what it really comes down to, is that now we're starting to see a pattern of him not being able to summon it in the final round of the majors. And I do think 3 times is fair. I think if you start to do the same thing 3 or 4 times in a row, that's a concerning trend. Just like we're kind of there with Spieth, which we'll talk about soon, but Jordan, there's a little bit of a trend there that he all of a sudden can't make a putt in a big tournament. And he didn't make a putt again for the second straight major over 4 days. And he still got a top 30 out of it. I'm not trying to say that he had a bad tournament, but you just think about, God, if you could just make some freaking putts every once in a while in a big spot, you could win these things.
And there's nothing more sure than stating that when he was on his best run and we were thinking he was the next Tiger and he was winning every major he was playing in, it felt like he was making putts. I mean, he was making every putt. The other stuff is still there, but yeah, you're right. He's not making putts, and in these tournaments, you really have to. Usually we look at Phil's short game, which was great this week, but he made putts and he also drove the ball pretty darn well. I don't know if it was hole 12 or 13 where, I was driving, so I was listening, and all of a sudden they said, "Oh, that's a good time for 357 right down the middle."
Yeah.
Almost 51 years old.
Yeah.
357 right down the middle.
He was 366 on the 16th hole. Now he's downwind, and that downwind was creating an effect, but that's just it. Phil's all over the place, right? I mean, he can't. He before coming into this tournament, he couldn't find a fairway to save his life, and when he needed one, he found a way to get one 366 down the middle of the fairway. When he had to have it, he was able to do it. Kind of like that's what Spieth used to do on the greens when he had to have 8 feet for birdie or 8 feet for par. He'd make it. Didn't happen this week. Didn't happen today for Koepka. Let me run down the leaderboard for you, and then we'll start to kind of pick on some names. This was just huge for Phil. Just huge for golf, by the way. Here's your top leaderboard of kind of how it works. Oosthuizen and Koepka tie for second. They T2. Oosthuizen again, the ultimate major bridesmaid. I mean, that guy is the bridesmaid. They should almost just call him that. We'll call him that on this podcast going forward. The bridesmaid, Louis. Takes tie for second with Koepka. Shane Lowry, a sneaky little T4 with Padraig Harrington. And Harry Higgs with a top 5 in a major. Good job, Harry Higgs.
Major debut, right?
Yep, that buys him a trip to the PGA next year. Paul Casey, a T4. That's a boring T4. Abraham Answer, T8 with Justin Rose, your guy. Colin Morikawa also with a T8. John Rahm sneaks in with a T8 as he shoots 4 under today. Zalatoris a T8. Scheffler as well finishes 1 under. So does Tony Finau. What a surprise. Tony Finau just kind of backdooring his way to a top 10.
Right where I would have pegged him.
Yep. I will say an encouraging T8 for Ricky Fowler. Very encouraging. Gets in on a special exemption. Ends up taking a top 10 out of that. That's pretty good for Ricky. Kevin Streelman finishes also T8. 16 guys in total finish under par. Going down the list, it looked like a good run early for Sung Jae Im. He fades. He shoots even par. Reed shoots even. Wise. Corey Connors shoots even. Matsuyama finishes +1 after he was in the mix for a good stretch yesterday. He was T2 at one point yesterday. Cantlay made a run where it looked like he was going to be there. He was top 5 at one point. He finishes +1. And Jordan Spieth there +2. Not a great final round. He shoots +2 in the final round. Also a faded round from Christian Bezuidenhout. Tyrrell Hatton had a tough day. DeChambeau was +5 today. He shoots +3 for the tournament. Brandon Grace shot +6 today. He shot +3 for the tournament. Jason Day +4. And there's many other names that go from there. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to talk? Do you want to talk about guys that do we want to talk about guys we're encouraged by or guys we're discouraged by? Where do you want to talk here?
So I want to talk a little of both. So I have a question for you to lead us right into that. Who on that list, is there anyone on there you think is in general underrated in that list you just read?
I'm not ready to say Shane Lowry's underrated. I know he won the Open. I don't think Shane Lowry's a guy who's going to rattle off 4 majors. I don't think so.
I'll give you a name.
Yeah, go ahead.
Corey Connors.
Yeah.
I watched
like
a lot
Corey
of the pre. I've looked back at the Masters. I just think that Corey Connors is a bit of an underrated player. I know that the statistical guru had stated that he, aside from Hideki Matsuyama, had the best tournament at the Masters, and here he is, all of a sudden, finishing pretty well at the PGA. So just a guy who I really think is underrated. I think he's a really good player.
I like Corey Connors a lot. I was disappointed. He had the clubhouse lead by 2 after round 1. He comes out in the morning on day 2 when the conditions were okay. They were gettable. And this is where he could have just gone out there, just go shoot 1 under par or even par, keep the momentum. And he didn't look ready for that moment. Like, he really struggled on the greens. He struggled to hit shots. And that's a concern for me as a guy who's like, all right, you had the press. Like, you had all the press clippings for 24. You slept on the lead. it didn't appear that you were ready to sleep on the lead. Like, it just doesn't seem like mentally you were ready to sleep on the lead, which tells me maybe you're not ready to rattle off 2 or 3 victories yet on this tour. He does have his one win, but that, that was and that was alchemy. I mean, that was an impressive victory. It was kind of one of them weird tournaments where he got a huge lead, it blew it, and then he came back and he won it. I like Corey Connors. I need to see him learn something from this experience and translate that into, I got a 36-hole lead, I got a 54-hole lead, and I'm going to close the deal and win it.
But coming into this year, would you have pegged him as a top 10 finisher in the first 2 majors?
No, I wouldn't have seen him as a top 20 guy. I wouldn't have looked at him and said, oh, that's a guy you can just pencil in. He'll be in the top 20. Mm-hmm. It's a tribute to his skill set. Like, he's played on 2 courses where you have to hit irons well, and he's hit irons well. This course to me didn't prove to be a driver's golf course. Really didn't. Mm-hmm. I felt like you could miss fairways and be okay, as long as you weren't way off. I think Justin Leonard did a good job of breaking this down on Live From when he said, like, it's not about fairways, it's about the corridors, right? If you can just keep it, like, these corridors are 50, 60 yards wide. Yeah, their fairways 30 yards wide or 25 yards wide, but if you can keep it in the navigational beacons, mm-hmm. you'll be fine. And it's the iron play that's going to make the difference, and your ability to flight shot in the wind and all that stuff. And Connors is clearly a guy who can do that. Phil was clearly a guy who could do that. And the guys who can't do that, we saw them get exposed a little bit. But I like Corey Connors. I think that's a good choice.
So now I'm going to talk about someone who I think is vastly overrated.
I got a handful of them on this list, but you fire away.
I think Tyrrell Hatton is vastly overrated. I just think he has to prove it. Yep. He's a good player when it comes to the Open Championship and those conditions and playing over there with those types of golf courses. You might pencil him into the top 10 if it's the Scottish Open, but he just consistently comes over here. He gets picked to be top 10, and he's missing cuts. He's not playing well. I think he's a little bit overrated. Yeah,
Tyrrell Hatton finishes in this tournament T38. He finished +3 on the tournament. Along with him, there are some guys I am concerned about, especially on the Euro side a little bit. Tommy Fleetwood is missing. Somebody needs to get a search party out for Tommy. Tommy Fleetwood is not the same guy. He's just not. He missed the cut this week, shot +7 in 2 rounds. Rich Beam shot the same score as Tommy Fleetwood this week. That's not good. That's a bad situation for him. I agree. Hatton's got to win a big event. Look, winning the Arnold Palmer, that's fine. That's fine. Let's go ahead. But you got to be in the mix. You don't got to win these, because I understand majors are hard to win. But you got to be in the mix, man. Like, you got to be around. And, yeah, he's not around enough for me. Just not around enough. I'm also... It's too early for me on Scheffler. Too early for me on guys like Zalatoris. I don't think that we should write them into the Ryder Cup team like some people want to do. I haven't seen nearly enough.
No.
I'm seeing some positives. A top 10 for Scheffler in a major, that's positive. That's really good. But I have not seen him close the deal in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing in the resume at this point that makes me go, yeah, he's going to be a major champion. I don't see that yet. That has to be proven at some point. It hasn't been proven yet.
Yeah, and there's nothing that screams that he has to be on the Ryder Cup team, because I just don't see a killer. I don't see a villain. I don't see a team. I just see a guy who's going to go out there and slap the ball around. If he wins, he wins. If he loses, he loses. I just don't see that charisma and that. I'm not there on Scotty Scheffler. So,
and I'm not there. I think. I think it's fair to say Rory right now. Another major and another pretty mediocre performance. T49 shot +5.
Yeah, it's a course he won at.
Yeah, he won here. But now we got to start asking, because he hasn't won a major in 7 years. Like, I don't think it's out of the realm. I'm not saying he can't win one because we just saw Phil frickin' win one at 51 and we saw Tiger win one at 45 or 43. I'm not saying he can't win one. But we're 7 years on from his last major. And again, I think you could live with it if he was in the mix. But he's not in the mix.
No.
Like, he wasn't competitive at Augusta. He wasn't competitive this week. He hasn't been competitive in a big event in a long time. I think it's... I mean, I know he won Wells Fargo. And like I said, that's great. You can win all the Wells Fargo championships you want. I'm not rooting against that. That's great. You don't have to apologize for that. But that's not... I mean, that's not what you set out to do. Like, Rory's made it pretty clear he wants to be one of the all-time greats. And look, he's a Hall of Fame golfer right now. If he doesn't hit another shot, he's a Hall of Fame golfer. But if you want to be in the top 10, top 15 all time, we're going to need more.
Who's going to be a higher ranked golfer post-career, Phil or Rory?
I don't think Rory gets to Phil's 6 majors. I don't think Rory gets to Phil's 45 wins. I don't think so.
Yeah. You think it'll mostly just come down to the major wins?
I think if Rory wins one more major, it'll be impressive. And I don't think it's impossible, but I don't know how likely that is just based on what I'm seeing. Because he's just not a good enough putter, and he's just not a good enough wedge player. And he's not, right now, like he hit his opening drive in round 3, nobody hit it in the water. Like, nobody hit it in the water. He hits it in the water right 2 days in a row. That's 30 yards off the fairway. You can't be that bad. Mm-hmm. Not off the first tee. Not when you've just had an hour on the driving range to put yourself in a position to hit a quality first tee shot. You can't do it 2 days in a row. And yet, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Rory just... It's starting to become a bit unpredictable with Rory, and I think it's a concern. I'm not giving up on him. I'm not saying he should quit the tour and go home. I'm just saying there are some concerning signs with guys like Rory.
Yeah. I would put my money that he will win another major. We kind of alluded to it earlier that this Phil win has to be encouraging for a lot of people not to be discluded.
For sure.
Rory McIlroy, right?
Yep.
He's that guy that he could strike out in majors for the next 15 years, and he has the game that, just like Phil did today, he could put it together and win. But yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot to be done if he wants to be in the, if he wants to get inside of Phil in terms of that conversation. So, but he's put himself in a position at the age, it was very compact at the beginning of his career, the wins and the trophies. But yeah, there's more that has to be done. Like I said, I would put my money that'll happen. But honestly, Phil is more of a beloved guy. I don't know if that's because he's American. It's the vibrato, it's the charisma, and the lightheartedness. But yeah, like I said, I'd put my money it happens, but it's not done. So
yeah, well, Phil has always been the people's champ. Like, there's no question. 2 guys move the needle in golf. Well, 3 really. Spieth is a guy who moves the needle, but he doesn't move it like Tiger and Phil does. Like, Tiger and Phil are just beloved. Phil maybe more. I mean, people love Tiger, but for very different reasons. I've always thought of it like Tiger is Jack and Phil is Arnold Palmer. Like, Phil is just universally loved because he's a swashbuckler. He goes for it. He's like every man who plays golf. He hits brilliant shots and he hits foul balls, and it's just what you love is the kind of the artistry. It's the artist versus like the technician, and that was Arnold versus Jack. Tiger and Phil are the same way. Tiger, the technician, is just a freaking robot, and he was unbeatable, and he was the most competitive guy in the history of golf, and he's amazing, and fans love him for that. And he's not the I mean, he's not the jag-off that Jack Nicklaus seems to be. I think Jack Nicklaus is kind of a blowhard, to my opinion. But Phil is Arnold Palmer, the thumbs up. I mean, he probably gave 25,000 thumbs ups today. Yep, totally did. And that's an Arnold Palmer thing. He's kind of got, and the fans just love him. Like, we saw that today really play itself out. We hadn't had fans like that. By the way, social distancing officially over in this country. I think we're back to golf. We're back to real life here officially in this place, because we just had like 25,000 white guys try to trample Phil Mickelson, who were definitely in the bag drunk, try to trample Phil on their way to 18 today. I think that's a sign that we're done with the 6-foot distancing here in this place, which, hey, there you go. But there wasn't distancing being had in that final grouping today, which was totally, it was great. It was totally fantastic. But that's what Phil elicits. He gets that reaction. There aren't a lot of guys who do. I think we started to get a sniff of that with Jordan Spieth in the last couple of months, right? Like, Spieth gets you excited. Spieth is like Phil in that regard, swashbuckling all over the place, wears his heart on his sleeve. I think you love that about him. There ain't a lot of guys on tour who do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting you bring up the Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, because I think if you were talking to an average golf fan of today, of this era, Arnold Palmer is so synonymous with golf. But Jack Nicklaus was twice the player. He has twice the accolades. But I don't know that the average golf fan would necessarily know that. I think that if you asked them that who had the better career, they would probably guess Arnold Palmer. And that could, Tiger and Phil are a little bit different, because Tiger, even though he's not the Phil personality, he's a very private guy. It's still there's a little bit of a comparison to be made there where Arnold Palmer really is the crowd favorite. And that's what Phil is. At some point today, I hadn't really thought of it, because I would have been watching if Sung J M was leading the tournament, right? And my wife, who's always been a really big Phil Mickelson fan, she was rooting for him all week. She just said at some point, I wonder how many people are watching right now because it's Phil. I just said, yeah, you're right.
I'd be surprised if the ratings were bad.
Huge for them.
Yeah.
What was that?
I'd be surprised if the ratings were bad. I would not be surprised if I hear that the ratings were good. I would expect that the CBS would be like, dude, we're thrilled. We're thrilled with that. And they had to be. They got Koepka and Phil in the final group on a Sunday. I mean, that had to be good. That's good stuff on a beautiful golf course.
Yeah, the golf course played beautifully. I don't know. I think they'll probably look at I don't know what the attributing factors were to how most in the field played today. I think that you want that score to be around par. I don't think that they're going to be thrilled about the fact that, there were times when the course was very playable and other times where it was apparently not playable at all. That was a little bit concerning. I think they'll look at that. But in general, the total to par score for Phil winning was perfect. I'm sure Kia was thrilled with that. I'm sure the PGA of America is thrilled with that. I just thought the course looked beautiful. I love the tough finish. I love the fact that you could score on the front and you had to kind of, try to keep your pants up on the back. I thought the golf course was great. I love that you don't necessarily have to look at the weather at a course like that. You just know the wind's going to be up, and it was.
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
It's just what it is.
Yeah, I love the golf course because this is all I ask for on the PGA Tour. This is all I ask, is give me holes where we can have two-shot swings. And, today we had, 7 two-shot swings. That's all I want, is there to be just a little bit of risk. I can accept 25 under winning a golf tournament. I can. As long as I feel like as we come down the stretch, you can be 2 back, 3 back, and still have a chance because things change. But last week at the Byron Nelson, for example, there was no drama to that. None whatsoever, because every hole was it's lift clean in place. They'll get a drop it on the fairway. They're going to hit it to 6 feet. The pros are that good. They will do that. Out here, when there is no lift clean in place and you got to play it as it is, hey, man, make it work. Figure it out. And I love the two-shot swing potential. Even on 18, Phil's got a 2-shot lead. And we still felt like it was in the balance. Like, until Phil hit the green in 2 and got it on in regulation from the rough, did you think it was over? I didn't think it was over yet. I'm like, boy, Phil could make a mess of this pretty easy.
Yeah.
And part of that's because it's Phil, but the other part of that is because it's the golf course. Like, the golf course has just enough teeth on every hole where, like, even the easy holes, you can make double. I looked at the drive, like, look at Brooks today. Everybody basically birdied the par 5 second. Brooks made double. I mean, most guys were birdieing or parring the third or fourth hole, the drivable par 4 today. But I watched guys make bogey. I watched guys not be able to get it up and down from just off the green. Like, they weren't able to do it. That's what I want in a golf course.
Yeah.
I mean,
everyone talks about 17 and is it 14 that play 13 or 14 plays the hardest hole today. But 2 was an interesting hole because even on Thursday I was watching that Speed Zalatoris group come through, and they were struggling with that hole, even though it was a par 5. If you get right, the trees are tall. You have, guys were hitting from bunker to bunker. That's a tough hole, despite the fact that you can score on it. I think that's kind of an underrated hole in that golf course. But the par 5s, just like 2, they were a microcosm of that. Very playable. But like you said, you could also make a bogey or a double, like Koepka did today. I don't know what he did on the final par 5, but at one point his par 5 scores were 7, 6, and 6.
Yeah, he did not play the par 5s well today at all.
That means it's probably a good par 5 because you can't make the par 5s. Sometimes I get annoyed that the Troy Merritts of the world can reach the green in 2 on pretty much every par 5. That to me, I think the whole point of a par 5 is it needs to be long enough that the long players are going to have an advantage, but there's a decision to make. Do I risk it and go? Too many par 5s nowadays. There's really no, these guys can hit a 5 hybrid and hit the green no problem, center of the green and have an eagle putt. That to me isn't exciting, but I want there to be a decision. I want there to be. That's why I love holes like a par 5 that there's water in play up by the green, because that really does make guys think a little bit. Do I take out the big club here? Or do I lay up? There should always be that decision on a par 5. I think Hewitt did a good job of having the course ready for the guys this week.
Yeah, I love strategy. I felt like this course brought strategy into it again. Yeah. And that's what makes golf like such an awesome sport. Like, it's like you got to really plot what you want to do out here. Like, do you want to flight it low? Do you want to hit it high? Do you need to get it on the ground a little more? And it was interesting to see, like, here's this course that's 76. It never played 7,800 yards. It never did. Played 76 most days. And there's Kevin Streelman, and there's Louis Oosthuizen. And it's like, oh, why? Because it's a shot maker's golf course. Like, if you can hit iron shots well, and you can play the course well with good strategy, you can hang. And you can't just bludgeon it to death. We certainly had bombers, like Phil and Brooks, right? But DeChambeau didn't bludgeon this course. DJ certainly didn't bludgeon this course. Justin Thomas didn't bludgeon this course. Rory didn't do that. So, I mean, it was a course where it examined every ounce of your game. Are you a good wedge player? Are you a good iron player? Are you a quality driver of the golf ball? Can you putt?
Yeah, like you stated, there were places in this golf course that you can miss the fairway and still have a chance to go at the green. I thought that it was just that situation where you were rewarded for a good tee shot. So another question I was going to ask you is, did you watch a lot of DJ? I watched a good amount of them on Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I watched a good amount Thursday for sure, and some Friday. Even
when he hits the fairway, he's got too much of the banana thing going on, and I just think he's losing a lot of distance right now, relying on that. I mean, I don't think there's anyone on tour who hits a power fade like he does. I just think he's losing a lot of distance. I think that's when he was at his peak, it was so much of the bomb and gouge. He was just down there. All he had to do was dial in his wedges, and once he finally did, that's when he finally started popping through on majors. But if you watch his ball flight, he's still hitting the fairway, but by the time the ball comes to rest, it's moving straight from left to right, and you're just going to lose a lot of distance. I don't know what the stats are on it, but I just think that he's got to start hitting a little bit more of a straight ball, and he has too many left misses when he is expecting to hit the banana curve and hits the straight ball, which happens to everyone.
He needs to hit Koepka's got it right with his 1 to 2 yard cut. Like when Koepka's on, it's a 1 yard cut, 2 yard cut, 3 yard cut, and it is for days, for miles. I did think DJ had a lot more going on with his swing. I think something's there. I don't know if it's a mental thing, a mental block, some kind of hurdle that he's experiencing. The WD at the Byron Nelson was weird, like prior to the tournament, because that's like his third or fourth, like sort of like WD right before a tournament without really any explanation given. I know they say like there was a knee thing, but then there's Instagram videos of him doing backflips off boats, and I don't know what to make of DJ right now. I just don't know where his head is. I don't know. I just don't know what to make of it. He just doesn't look like a guy who's super engaged in playing golf right now. Like he doesn't look like he's confident. He doesn't look like he's got. I mean, like the question this week about the putter. Some people thought that was kind of a coy. It's DJ being DJ. I don't know. It felt like an inexplicable answer. Like, first of all, if you are being why? If you are being secretive, why? It's a putter. Who gives a shit what putter you're putting with? You know, and if it is just I don't know, it's putter, I just putt with it, then I don't know if I love that attitude either. Like, I want to know what you're like. I didn't think it was a horrible question. Like, I didn't think it was, hey, you change putters a lot. Do you have the spider in the bag, or is it something else? Oh, it's TaylorMade. I don't know what kind of putter it is exactly. It's like, no bullshit. Like, no way. No way is that your answer. Like, that's a terrible answer. And it's like it's either you're being unnecessarily douchey to the reporter, or you're so like laissez-faire about the experience that you don't bother to think or care or acknowledge these things. Or, you know, and I guess I just didn't love the answer either way. I'm assuming he was just trying to be a funny dick, but didn't need, like, just answer the question. Are you putting with a spider or aren't you? Like, that's not hard.
I didn't hear that, but that doesn't surprise me. I mean, that's DJ to a T, right? He's just so lax about everything, and probably in most cases to a fault. If he's not aware what putter he has or what the thought is behind it, his team sure is, and that's going to be communicated to him. So yeah, I do think it's a little bit. I think he's a little bit annoyed with the media, which again is a huge. I can't stand that stuff because I think that, as I've told you many times, I don't think the PGA Tour has done a great job with promoting their players, and players like a Dustin Johnson need to realize, hey, you want to make $1.5 million when you win the Byron Nelson, you need to connect a little bit more with the fans. You just do.
Yeah.
Golf has to grow, and DJ's not really doing a whole lot for that.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like he's unapologetic about it. Like he's like, it's not my problem, man. You know?
It wasn't a gotcha question. That's the thing. It's not a gotcha question. The PGA press corps asks nothing but lollipops half the time. They don't ask hard questions. This wasn't like a White House press corps briefing. You know, he wasn't Jen Psaki up there taking questions. Like, it was a question about your putter. Just answer it. Why? Like, I didn't understand that. And JT, I felt like his press conference before the tournament was also sort of unnecessarily combative and unnecessarily, like, just kind of, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if like everybody sort of hit the spot where their mood is like a certain way, but there are a lot of guys that are good players that are just making some inexplicable decisions and kind of playing in a fog right now. JT's one, DJ's one, Rory. And they can summon it for a weekend like at Wells Fargo or like the Players, but other than the Players, has JT played well this year? Yeah. I lost your mic for a second. Are you still there? I saw you say no, but I kind of lost your mic. Crank you up. Anyway, we'll try again. Yeah, I don't think he's played well. I mean, DJ won the Masters in November. Has DJ played well?
No. And I would say more so than JT. JT had a little bit of a sputter, but, I mean, DJ has played poorly. It's not just that he hasn't played well. DJ's played poorly.
Exactly. So, I mean, we're starting to, like, see some guys that I'm just, I don't know. JT is a guy that, he's not a top 5 favorite to win a tournament until further notice. Like, I got to see it. I got to see it first. I don't see it right now. I don't see it in DJ right now. I don't see it in Rory right now. And those are big guys. Those are big guys on the tour, and I don't see it. I don't see big things coming from these guys in the next few months. It's very concerning. Anyway, let's talk about... We did love the golf course. We agreed on that. Uniformly, we loved the course. We thought the course was fantastic. I was a huge fan of it. The PGA Championship is one of these championships that needs an identity. I still don't know if it has an identity yet. Because what you got at Harding Park was nothing like what we got at Kiowa. You know, and I loved both golf courses for different reasons. I thought Harding Park was great. And I think Kiowa was great. I still don't know what this tournament wants itself to be. Does it want to be a tough golf tournament where 8 under, 9 under par wins it? Does it want to be a tournament that only plays long golf courses? Like, what is it? I don't know what the identity is still of this tournament.
No, the PGA Championship has absolutely no identity. Even though I loved Kiowa, it was a pretty random choice, right?
Yeah.
I also thought that Harding Park was very random. You know, it's almost like they're trying to go to sort of these extremes. Harding Park kind of had the history and kind of the comeback feel. That was about all Harding Park did for me. West Coast golf courses, unless it's Torrey or Pebble, they just don't tend to do a ton for me. But yeah, they do have to find an identity, because even though golf fans like you and I are tuned in because it's a major championship and it just doesn't matter who's on top or where they are, we're going to watch and we're going to be dialed in. A lot of people that I know weren't super dialed in, and they don't tend to be for the PGA Championship, even though it is the 4th biggest tournament of the year, right?
Yeah.
Which should mean something.
Now, I do like it in May over August, because I think it opens the door to a ton more venues. I guess what I'd like to see it become is a tournament like, you know, in Europe for the Open, they play links golf. They have plenty of tree-lined courses they could play in Europe, but they have said, nope, our rota is links courses. That's it. I'd like to see the PGA be a place where it's like we play courses near water with not a lot of trees and lots of wind. Like, let that be your venue. Like, I'm cool with that, because that opens the door to some possibilities. I mean, yeah, it shuts out New York a little bit, but it shuts out New York anyway. Because I know they're playing Oak Hill next year and stuff, but, I mean, golf in May in New York, I mean, I don't know if that's predictable. I don't think you can count on that every year. I like the idea of let's play in the South and on the West Coast. Let's play on open golf courses with not a lot of trees, and let's play, you know, courses where wind is a factor, so that we can have some consistency with that. I think the U.S. Open, at least you know what their identity is. They're going to make the rough go really long, and it's going to be really hard. The Open has its thing, and the Masters is the Masters. PGA needs to find something that they can cling to a little bit.
I thought I heard a plug that the PGA was going to Southern Hills next year.
They are. Yep.
Tulsa.
Yep. Southern Hills
and
and Tulsa.
What were you saying about New York?
They're going Oak Hill. I think it's Oak Hill in a couple years. They still have Southern Hills. I think it's a couple years away from Oak Hill, but they're going up there. And I know they went there a ton in August, and it made sense back in the day. I don't know if it makes sense to go there in May now. And I know they can't. They made that commitment before they made the May switch, but it's something like courses like Belle Reve, courses like they don't need to play courses like that.
Yeah, I'll give them a little bit of a pass, because I'm just not sure what that identity needs to be. I mean, luckily there's people making a lot more money than me who get to make those decisions. But like you alluded to, they have to make those decisions because it really has fallen to the, to be kind of the little brother of these major tournaments. And I would say that the Players is probably as popular of watched tournament, maybe the timing and the fact that it is a consistent golf course that people get into and it has a signature.
I'd like to see a 5-course rota. Come up with 5 to 7 courses that just you say, this is what we're doing. We're going here. The U.S. Open kind of has that. The Open certainly has that. Like, just write down 7 courses. Just say Kiowa, Bethpage Black, Harding Park, and 4 other really awesome, amazing golf courses that don't host U.S. Opens. Hazeltine. But Hazeltine in May, you're rolling the dice. I mean, I don't know if you want to do something like that, but I mean, there's options out there. Just say, these are our 7. We're going here every 7 years. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, the Open Championship definitely has their rotation, which they've added a couple to in recent years. But yeah, the U.S. Open, the thing I love about the U.S. Open is I don't have to research it. I know that they're going to find the hardest golf course they can, and they're going to make it even harder. They're going to stretch it out. They're going to dry out the greens. That's what I love about the U.S. Open. The U.S. Open definitely has that identity that I know that they're setting out to make the winning score close to par. That's just what they do at U.S. Opens.
Indeed.
But the PGA Championship, you don't know that when you tune in. I mean, I had to watch War by the Shore. I had to research it. I had to watch all the pre-stuff. I watched the players' reaction. I was tuned in because I didn't know what to expect, which did something for me. But I think the average golf fan, when they don't know what to expect and they're not going to recognize a single thing, I don't think it does a lot for those types of golf
They could
fans.
play this tournament there every 5 years. I'd be thrilled. It would be great.
They could play this tournament there every year.
They could play it there every year if they wanted to. Hell yeah, I wouldn't be against that. Although it's a public golf course, it's hard to shut it down for a month prior to the tournament or 2 months prior. But anyway, all right, what else you got? Otherwise, I have one more thing, and then we'll move from there.
We sort of alluded a little bit. I'm just going to give a little bit of a golf clap to Ricky Fowler.
Yeah, good job, Ricky.
He needed a special exemption to get in. This is a big deal for Ricky Fowler because there's 2 directions he can go in. I mean, he can't continue the way he's playing.
Good to see the orange back out.
That would mean bad things. So
yeah, good to see the orange back out on a Sunday. I hadn't seen him wear orange on a Sunday in a long time.
No,
it was like he was
I don't
running
think
from
that
it.
they showed any of his shots on Sunday. He wasn't playing golf on Sundays.
Yeah, but I think he had kind of ran from the orange. Like that's like a throwback, Ricky. I was in on that. Very in.
I was too. Yep. So golf claps for Ricky. Also golf claps, obviously, for Phil Mickelson. I mean, 6th major, 50 years, almost 51. It's hard to say it was dominating fashion, but he did have kind of a stranglehold on the tournament. Once you realized that he wasn't going to fade back into irrelevance, he was pretty much in command of the tournament. So golf claps for those two.
Yeah, he slept on the lead. Hard to do.
Yeah.
And he found a way to win.
He did, and he played well enough today to win.
And that scorecard's all over the map. I mean, he made 5 bogeys today. He made 5 birdies and shot, or made 6 bogeys, 5 birdies, or something like that. It was all over the map. I mean, it was a roller coaster ride, but that's what we've come to expect from Phil. Last note.
That's what Kiowa gave us. Yeah.
Did you notice Phil and his putting stroke this week?
I did. Yes, very much so.
Ty Schrupp's Revolution. The Revolution is on Ty.
I texted him. I said, hit bombs, putt conventional.
We started this crusade about 2 months ago where we said, you know what, if you're going to suck at putting, just putt conventionally. Phil, this week, inexplicably, switches putters, goes back to the old putter, the old bladey putter.
Old mallet.
The old bladey butter knife, and goes conventional. And maybe he was the most steady he's been on the greens in months. Yeah.
Friends of mine asked me recently, do you think you could go a whole podcast without mentioning claw grip or arm lock, and it's honestly such a big deal right now that I don't think we can.
No.
Right? It's a big deal right now. It's kind of the A topic when it comes to not necessarily golf fandom, but kind of the nerd part of it, and the technique and the future of the game. It's a big deal, and it. Who knows? I don't know if it's in the technique or if it's just, if it helped him mentally, but he putted well enough. And it wasn't an easy, there were a lot of long putts. There were big greens at this golf course. So not a lot of 3 putts out of Phil. So I just think that the claw grip is kind of a gimmick. No one's ever been able to explain to me how it gives you a true advantage. So I'm conventional all the way, so go Phil.
Well, Phil did switch to claw. I think it was subconsciously on the 2-footer at 17. Like he had to make that little 2-footer to save bogey, and he went claw to put it in. And you saw him. He started claw, went conventional, switched back to claw, and made the putt. And I'm like, that's the first time I've seen him go claw all weekend. And you notice he didn't claw it at 18. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe the revolution is on, Ty. Every week we talk about it, and it seems like every week somebody's making the switch back to something conventional, or they're shedding the claw, or they're doing something different. Something's happening. And I think you're right. How many people are winning major championships with a claw grip?
Not a lot.
There you go. There's something for you. Ty, I enjoyed it. I'm glad we had a chance to sit down and just talk about this golf tournament. Coming up this week is the Colonial, and I think Ty and I will try to get back here and actually do a little preview of that golf tournament. We'll see if that happens. If not, we'll save it this week. We'll come back for the preview stuff as we lead up towards the Memorial, lead up towards the U.S. Open. That is right around the corner, by the way. We are like a month away, less than that, from freaking Torrey Pines.
I'm looking forward to Torrey Pines. That'll be a fun venue.
One thing I'll save, because this is a Phil day, so I won't talk Tiger, but we will save this because I want to hear your feedback on this when we get to our next pod. Stricker publicly asks Tiger to be a vice captain for the Ryder Cup team at Whistling Straits. We'll see what your take is on that. We'll talk a little bit about Colonial. We'll do all kinds of stuff. Get back into the groove of it. Neither of us did well in fantasy this week. Just not good. Another bad week for me. Just another really just bad week. Got to rethink my whole process for guys in fantasy. We'll figure it out, but we'll get to it from there. I want to thank everybody for listening. Continue to share us out. Once again, Spotify, Podbean. You can send me a tweet at Tim Anderson Pod. You can Mr. Tim Anderson on Instagram, timpodcast1@yahoo.com if you want to drop an email. We'll take care of you. Subscribe, send a review, do all that jazz. And we thank you for listening. Ty, thanks for making time for me, my friend.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, we'll chat soon. And everybody else here at the pod, thanks for listening. And keep your head up. We'll see you next time.